Hello, this is Jerry again. Today should be video 13, I think. It's February the 3rd, 2024. Um, Saturday. If you're self employed or even if you work for another company, sometimes you got to work weekends. So it's about 1:20 here where I'm at, and I'm about to call it quits and go change the oil in my one of my pickups. Um, but the reason that I'm doing this quick video as I'm finishing up work today is well, let me back up. There's two reasons I'm doing this video because I'm in the middle of what I'm about to talk about right now, or was. And also make a correction. Yesterday's video, which had been video 12, I'm in the title. I misspelled advice and did advise. It's the second time I've done a typo since I started doing videos. Probably gonna do more of them. I don't edit. I'm multitasking. I don't give a shit. But I do know how to spell a little bit. But anyway, moving on. So in a past video, I was talking about always checking your subcontractors' quantities. Okay. Um, because I mean they're right a lot of times, but sometimes they could be light or they could be too heavy, and you have to know their quantities better than they do because you're the GC. You're responsible, especially if it's a unit price bid item. If you're paid so much per foot, you know you need to know. So I double check everything. Now I just finished up. Uh, on a project that I've repriced and sent to the customer. And this is in the same energy of double checking your subcontractor's quantities, but it's not because he didn't give me any quantities. So, and the second thing I'll talk about will be after that. Basically, I have a project over at the coast. It's a design build. This is job I've talked about a little bit in the past. We landed the contract, signed the contract back in May of 2022. The engineers that did have the job had it for 3 or 4 years and only didn't even get it to 30% approval for the DQ. We get the job in May, sign the contracts, and we've already got DQ approval. There's a couple comments that I'm going to talk about now that we have to answer for the DQ, but they're pretty, I mean, out of the handful of comments, we have approval. I mean, there's only one comment that really mattered, and that was really double checking the pumps, which we did. So, and we didn't use any, the only thing we used out of the old engineer's design was the pumps. And they actually had two different types of pumps. They actually had one pumps in their 30% design when they turned it in, the DQ. And then in their specs, they had a different pump that was like 10 horsepower difference, which on these size of pumps is a lot of money and wouldn't fit. But anyway, that's a different story. So on this particular project, there's an existing wet well about, the bottom, I say about 10 feet of it, but give or take a foot or two. And then at 10 feet up, they switched over and did 4 foot ID. So it's 6 foot ID for the bottom 10 feet, and then 4 foot ID, the other 20, or I don't know. I think the whole wet well is 26, 27 feet deep, I think. So the rest of it's all 4 foot, which nobody knows why they did that. And this thing was built back in the 70s, so it's been a long time. We are doing something different than what the past engineers wanted to do, which would have cost taxpayers a lot more money. We're not removing the entire wet well. We're only going down to where the 6 foot ID and the 4 foot ID meet, ripping off the 4 foot ID, shoring it, whole 9 yards, and then stacking new 6 foot ID up to the top. Just give you kind of an idea. Well, one of the comments the DQ had was they wanted the wet well lined. Now, for gas reasons, if we're deteriorating concrete, I understand. I'm a big fan of lining, big fan of it. But when you're over in the Northwest coast, I have seen thousands of sewer manholes and hundreds upon hundreds of wastewater sewer pump stations. It doesn't get hot enough there. I mean, I've been in Arizona, I've been in California, I've been in eastern part of Oregon and Washington, and I've seen where the concrete got effed up, screwed up. But usually if you're in cool temperatures, you have to worry about it. But the city, the customer said, hey, they have hardly any comments on your guys' design. That's amazing. Let's keep this positive energy going. Let's go ahead and just line the wet well. I'm like, okay, no reason to argue. We pretty much got approval. I mean, pretty much approval. I've already ordered the pumps. I've already ordered the control panels, disconnect panels, flow meter. Piping, check valves, plug valves, other stuff too, whatever. I've already put a lot of stuff already in order to speed things up. Okay. So I called a guy named Casey. Shout out to Casey. He's a lining guy. I mean, he does CIP. He does lining. He does a whole bunch of stuff. But I had him on a project, actually do a bunch of CIP lining. He worked great with us. He did a great job, really, or I wouldn't be working with him again. So I called him up today, give me a price on lining this wet well. He gave me, shot me an email. This is for mob, which is normal. This much is for cleaning the wet well, which you really shouldn't have to do because my guys will have it pretty damn clean because they got to work in there too. It'll be pretty spotless. And then the third price was square foot unit price. He never did the quantities. Now, I don't blame him. He was in a hurry, and I'm a big fan of him. He does great work. But I didn't have a quantity to work with. So, I had to figure out, which I've done many times in the past, figure out the base square footage and figure out the inside of the wet well, which is like a cylinder, and figure out the area and put his unit price in there. So I'm not really double checking his units of measure because he didn't do a units of measure. He just gave me a unit price. So I had to do the units of measure, which being design build, whatever part of the design, I did it and got the price in there, got it all updated, and said he's got everything. That's part one. Part two is remembering to do things by hand. And what I mean by hand, I mean also using your HP calculator or whatever. It's so easy to go on the internet and go on Google and type in square footage of a cylinder. You can boom, pop it in. It's even got a chart. You put in the depth, you put in the radius, and it spits out your base, your lateral walls, and your top. Okay, it does it all for you, which is fantastic. I use it too. I use it to double check my stuff actually. But a lot of you in this line of work had probably either been to college like me. Probably a lot of you actually finished. I didn't. A lot of you might be college and a field guy like me originally, or some of you guys are field guys who just learned it without college. Okay, like the old estimators did. But it's good to go back and do the thought process. Write down the equation. Write down the radius, write down the depth, figure out the equation still using your brain because it keeps you sharp and it keeps your brain clicking. Like, I'll be honest with you. I was like, when I seen he sent me a unit price, I was like, shit, what is a square foot? And I was like, what's that equation? What's that equation? What's that equation? What's that equation? I couldn't get it off the top of my head. That's why I kept all my books from college. I kept my surveying book, my engineering books. I kept my mathematics books. I kept my AutoCAD, which I can't stand to use, and I don't use it. Got somebody on the team that does the drafting. Thank God. Shot the scene. I still keep that stuff. But when I went on and typed in and seen the equation, I'm like writing things down so I can remember the equation in my head. And it keeps my brain fresh and it keeps me remembering. Like, I probably won't have to do this exact equation for another 2 or 3 years, and I'll probably have to look it up again, but maybe not. Maybe just always remembering to do things by my math by hand and my calculator. I can use the internet to double check things. Now, our internet's a beautiful tool when used correctly, but it's not a creator. We created all the codes in it. So sometimes just remember, we created the codes, go back and do it by hand. That's my opinion. That's part two of this. That's about all I got to say, actually. So anyway, I told you that I'll be doing videos when I'm in the middle of something. And that's something it's finished now, but something I was working on finishing it up. And it kind of tied in with the past video I did about checking your subcontractor's quantities. This happens to be a design build project, so it's a little different, but stay smart. Keep exercising your brain. Don't let Google and the internet do everything for you. So anyway, have a good weekend. Once again, February the 3rd, 2024, the last video. I misspelled advice. Run with it, whatever. Have a great day. Do something good for somebody or yourself.